Khamzat Chimaev is looking massive 3 weeks out from his fight with Paulo Costa. And I think that this whole narrative of Paulo Costa maybe being too strong for Khamzat Chimaev to manipulate around the octagon is probably going to come crashing down. It's probably going to fall on its face because I think that we're looking at one of the bigger middleweights right now on the roster in Khamzat Chimaev. And I've also seen some of Paulo Costa and some of what he's looking like leading up into this fight, and he's not nearly as impressive as I remember. Now, don't get me wrong, Khamzat Chimaev is not going to be bigger than Paulo Costa on the night of the fight, but if you're looking at some of these images, Khamzat right now is leaner 3 weeks out from his fight with Paulo Costa than he was when he got on the scales at his most depleted to fight Gerald Meerschaert in 2020, which leads me to believe that maybe in 2020, even though he wasn't a small middleweight, he was more of like a big welterweight that just wasn't cutting weight. That's kind of what Khamzat Chimaev was looking like that night. Right now, this dude's still 3 weeks out. He probably has another 20, 25 pounds to cut. He's going to have to cut a lot of water. Most of that 20, 25 pounds is water weight that he's going to have to cut. But right now, again, he's not at all depleted, and he's looking huge for this division if you're just taking into account how much muscle he has and then how low body fat he has and how far he is outside of this camp. Paulo Costa, on the other hand, he ain't looking that great. And I'm just saying, I saw a photo that he posted on his Instagram about 5-6 days ago. He had just got off of a plane traveling from Brazil or wherever he was training to come out to the UAE, to go to Abu Dhabi, to acclimate a little bit early to the time difference, the heat out there. And don't get me wrong, I am fully aware that after traveling, after having a long flight, you're going to be holding a lot of water. You're going to have a lot of water retention, and you're going to look a little bit bloated. And there's definitely also an element of the lighting in this photo that you're seeing of Paulo Costa where he's not looking that great. But my point is, I know Costa's going to be a big guy on the night of the fight. I know that Paulo Costa's going to look lean. He's going to look shredded when he weighs in at 185 pounds. I hope to God that he actually makes weight so that there aren't any shenanigans, any chances that this fight doesn't happen. But I'm just saying, I don't think Paulo Costa is going to outweigh Khamzat Chimaev, and I don't think he's going to have that much more strength than Khamzat on the night of the fight. Khamzat Chimaev has taken a lot of time off. Since his last fight with Kevin Holland, he's been in constant talks of fighting guys at middleweight. Robert Whittaker, like Paulo Costa. He's been in talks to fight people like Jared Cannonier. He's been putting a lot of work in the gym. I've been seeing this guy doing heavy lifting in a lot of the videos and vlogs that have been surfacing online. And I think that Khamzat Chimaev is always a guy that's been a middleweight that's just been draining himself to get down to 170 pounds. And we are finally seeing him actually fill out his natural frame. Again, this dude is 6'2". He is not by any means like the average height for the middleweight division. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a guy that's 6'2", that is still tall for a middleweight fighter. The average height of a middleweight fighter is probably like 6 foot. And usually the guys that are tall for a weight class, those are the ones that lose out on a little bit of strength. Those are the ones that aren't that heavily muscled. Khamzat Chimaev is not only tall for middleweight, but he's also heavily muscled. He's built. Now, of course, he's not as heavily muscled as Paulo Costa, but my point is this narrative that Paulo Costa is going to be just too strong for Khamzat Chimaev to manipulate in the grappling, I really do think is going to fall on its face in the night of the fight, because even if Khamzat Chimaev is just a little bit off in terms of strength, I do not think it'll be by much. And if it's not by much, if they're damn near even on strength, the skill is going to be unbelievably stark. The skill difference is going to be stark on the night of the fight. And I genuinely think that Khamzat Chimaev, given all the attribute advantages that he has, again, the reach, the speed, moving up from the welterweight division, one of the fastest moving wrestlers or grapplers in the entire sport. If you're looking at how quickly this man is able to get from point A to point B when shooting a takedown, it's basically second to none with Khamzat Chimaev. And on top of that, you're looking at a guy that's going to have the threat of the takedown, which is going to open up the striking. And he already has shown to have devastating one-shot KO power in the middleweight division, knocking out guys like Aliskadov, knocking out a guy like Gerald Meerschaert with one punch. And I know that Paulo Costa's tough. But I genuinely think, guys, if you're picking Paulo Costa, you better be worried now because Khamzat Chimaev is not just a welterweight that's moving up. He is a big middleweight. It's going to be too much. And that's why I'm bringing this stuff up for you guys because, again, I understand what I'm looking at when I'm looking at a guy that is this far out of a fight, that's this lean. Usually, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, someone that is this lean at the highest level where everyone's cutting a lot of weight, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out of a fight, is usually a guy that is going to be massive for the weight class. It's very, very rare that you have someone that's this lean, this far out, that's just an average size fighter for the weight class that's taking the approach of just being lean. There's a reason why fighters are doing massive water cuts a week out of their fight. There's a reason why they're sitting in a sauna trying to lose 10 pounds of water weight. It's because they don't want to deteriorate their body too much. They don't want to sacrifice strength. They don't want to sacrifice muscle. And there's hardly any guys at the highest level that are getting absolutely shredded a week before the fight that won't do a water cut. Again, why? Because you want to blow back up on the night of the fight. You want to have a strength and a size advantage. And you will not have that if you just simply cut down on fat and fight. Because again, let's say, for example, that you're going to be fighting at 155 pounds and you're going to be taking the approach of cutting a ton of water weight. So let's say you're going to cut down to 165, okay? And you want to do a water cut. Why would you want to do a water cut? Why would you want to cut 10 pounds of water and not cut 10 pounds of fat to get down to 155 pounds? Well, because it's a lot harder to lose the fat. It's going to take a lot longer. And in the process of losing that fat to get very lean, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle. So it's easier to cut 10 pounds of water because it's going to be a quick burst. You're going to lose 10 pounds of water. You're going to do that in 1 or 2 days, and you're going to put it right back on as soon as you hydrate again. So that way, when you actually fight after making weight at 155 pounds, you'll be rehydrated. And once you're rehydrated, you'll bump back up to 165 or 166, whatever you're going to bump back up to. But now let's say you're the guy that's cutting to 155 pounds that's taking the approach of just losing body fat. Well, number one, in order to get down to that 155 pounds, it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to take a lot more effort. You're going to lose a little bit of muscle and strength throughout the way to get down there. And that's going to deteriorate your body. It's going to take away energy from you. And by the time you make that weight, let's assume, again, you're not cutting a lot of water to get down there. After you get off the scales, between that moment until the next night where you're going to fight, like a 24, 30-hour window, you're not really going to see a big return. You're not going to see a big change physically. It's basically the same thing. You were already hydrated when you weighed in. You were just lean. This is why it's not rare for fighters to be 15, 20 pounds heavier on the night of the fight. And I do not think that Khamzat Chimaev is taking the approach of just losing body fat. He's just lean because he's in great shape. You know what I mean? He's not trying to deplete himself this far out of a fight in a new weight class. It's just that this dude is finally filled out. He's letting himself eat more food in the offseason, and he's letting himself grow. His body is putting on more muscle because the weightlifting sessions, and he's not just maintaining in the offseason, he's actually able to get a little bit stronger. And so essentially, we're looking at Khamzat Chimaev that, let me guess, is maybe 205 pounds right now. That's probably going to lose a couple more pounds, maybe a couple more pounds of fat. And the week and a half before the fight, he's going to start cutting a little bit of water. He'll get down to 185 pounds. He'll blow back up. He'll put on 15, maybe 16 pounds in between the weigh-ins and the night of the fight, and he'll be a strong, lean, shredded 205 pounds in the cage. The same thing is true for Paulo Costa when he cuts weight. Paulo Costa's not cutting down to 190, 195 pounds a few weeks out of his fights. He's cutting down to 190 the night before weigh-ins. You know what I mean? Like hours before he makes weight, he's 190 pounds. Paulo Costa probably starts his water cut at like 205. You know what I mean? Maybe even 208 pounds. I don't think that the strength and the size is going to be a big difference. I genuinely think that Khamzat Chimaev is going to be able to hold his own in there. And I just wanted to make this video because I'm more confident now than ever that Khamzat Chimaev is going to absolutely run through this guy and demolish him, right? My prediction for this fight, as I've said before, is that Khamzat Chimaev is going to go out there. He's going to take down Paulo Costa. Okay, he's going to be able to out-finesse him in the grappling exchanges. Paulo Costa's been taken down by guys like Yoel Romero. He's been taken down by Marvin Vettori. Every guy that's even tried to take down Paulo Costa has succeeded, even an old man Luke Rockhold. if Khamzat Chimaev, who is in his prime, who's getting better, who's one of the fastest guys that we've ever seen shoot takedowns, gets a hold of Paulo Costa, I think he's going down. I think he's going to get planted on his back. And I think that Paulo Costa is just going to be too out of his depths to be able to deal with the level of grappling skill that Khamzat Chimaev has to show. And not only that, but if this fight were to stay standing, let's say Paulo Costa is able to stuff a takedown, he's just damned if he does and he damned if he don't, because he's going to be standing with Khamzat Chimaev that actually has one-shot KO power that's going to be massively improved since the last time we saw him strike against Gilbert Burns, which was not really a great showing for Khamzat Chimaev. I think you could make the argument that Gilbert Burns won that fight, but I think that that was a couple years ago, or at least a year and a half ago, and Khamzat Chimaev, he's probably going to be much more powerful at middleweight, just given what we've seen. We haven't seen Khamzat lay anyone out at welterweight. We've seen him lay people out at middleweight, and that's just because at welterweight he's only had one striking battle. But I think it's going to be too much for big Paulo Costa. And I think the big bloated Paulo Costa that really just has a strength chance. And this is what I'm talking about Paulo Costa. Puncher's chance? No. Paulo Costa doesn't knock anyone out. Paulo Costa doesn't have a single instant in his entire career where he's chinned anyone with one shot. Paulo Costa has a strength chance, which means he can, maybe get the stubborn stuffed takedown, and he can stubbornly get up to his feet and just survive a bad onslaught from Khamzat early, and maybe somehow edge out the end of the second round and the third round, but it's very unlikely. So I just wanted to make this video to discuss this once again, because Khamzat Chimaev, again, is looking very, very shredded 3 weeks out. That's a sign of a very big middleweight. Robert Whittaker, 3 weeks out from his fight, probably rocking a little bit of a belly. I'm not talking about a beer belly, but probably rocking some flab. They're not looking this lean. Khamzat Chimaev is looking mean. He's looking lean. He's tall. He's big for the weight class. And I think Paulo Costa's screwed until next time. What is up, guys? It's Lucas Tracy MMA here, and I want to let you guys know that I have something for you. And that's a real food cookbook. Because if you're walking around looking like Chris Dawkins, you got to get that weight off. I don't know if you think you're DC or something, but most people usually don't perform at their best when they're walking around with 30% body fat. So if you're trying to lean out and you still want to eat good, tasty comfort foods, well, you could check out my Real Food Cookbook, because I've made it a purpose to have good, tasty foods that you can still eat just without all the processed bullshit, without all the processed ingredients like soy and seed oils. So guys, check out the Real Food Cookbook. Use code MMA for 30% off. The link is in my description. Don't forget that discount.